Hi, my name's Ama. I'm a multi-time national champion racing privateer. Today we're going to be going on a little bit of a ride, with Nick with Wove, and super excited to kind of share a little bit about myself and my journey with cycling, and hope some of it resonates.
I think it'd be really nice for some of our folks to get to know you.
Yeah.
So I guess we've already had a conversation about this, but going one step further back, you told us that your father worked at Nsek.
Yeah.
So can you start off telling us a little bit about his and your mother's story?
Yeah, so my parents are, my mom's from Mexico, my dad is Nigerian. They came here when they were young.
Okay.
My grandpa on my mom's side was constantly going back and forth across the border. So half of her siblings are American, half her siblings are, Mexican in nationality. But my dad came over, I believe when he was 11.
Okay, wow.
And my grandpa on that side, he went to UCLA, the Nigerian government sent him to UCLA to get his degree.
Nice. In
mechanical engineering.
Okay.
So he could build desalination plants in Nigeria.
Okay.
So that's what brought them over. But once my grandpa got his degree, he left them with the decision as to whether or not to stay in the US.
Okay.
Or go back.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a little interesting, but he decided to stay.
Okay.
And his parents went back, and so did, a good amount of his siblings. And he was living with a Vietnamese family.
Okay.
For his high school, the rest of his time in high school. He was always super smart.
Yeah.
So, focused on computer science.
Okay.
Just naturally in high school, and when he went to college, he and I are very similar. We just enjoy self-study.
Yeah.
So he knew so much about it. He was always sleeping in class, still getting the 4.0.
Yeah.
And when he graduated, the professors were such big fans of him. They offered him a position to work IT at Nsek.
Okay.
And he never left.
Just going one step back, what did self-study look like for him?
Just reading, just a ton of reading. And
yeah, I know from my experience, having had a number of professors who are Nigerian and friends, education is huge culturally.
Yes, so, forget the stat, but when it comes to Nigerians, I believe they have the highest immigration to bachelor's degree percentage.
That's right.
There's a heavy importance on education.
Right.
And honestly, it was kind of funny. My mom's a teacher.
Oh, okay.
So they both, they met at Nsek. I'll give my mom's story so that you can kind of see how
Please.
They merge.
Thank you.
But yeah, my mom, she has, off the top of my head, I'm thinking 7 siblings. It's a lot. Yeah, very traditional. Knew she needed to get her degree in order to have a very stable lifestyle.
Yeah.
And that's what she valued. That's what my dad valued.
Okay.
They were runners at Nsek.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So, the Nsek relays are world famous.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, they met running cross country and doing track and field.
Super interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you had that athletic background too.
Yeah. Yeah, they were very particular.
Yeah.
And, my mom started teaching. My dad just worked his way up in the, IT org.
Okay.
He never left Nsek.
Okay.
And
to this day,
he passed away.
Okay, I'm sorry to hear.
Yeah. But yeah, they were very much people of intention, and I loved that.
Yeah.
So I think I was always impressed by that, but it wasn't until I really reached adulthood where I was like, whoa,
able to internalize, process, and understand what they had done.
Yeah, 9 years to save up, to buy a house,
right,
to get the emergency fund, to be ready to have kids. I just like growing up. And
Rather than just checking off some life box.
Yeah.
Very well thought through.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people who don't really think about things before they do it, and it's like the majority of people are, kind of
On autopilot?
yeah, a victim to the moment.
You know what's interesting is your mother being from a family of 7, right?
Yeah.
You would think she might go on autopilot.
So, I think I admire different things about both of my parents, but yeah, I don't know, over the last decade, I've seen my mom show grit that I never thought was actually physically possible from a human being.
Oh yeah.
And, a level of, foresight into the future to make strong decisions. She's just shown a lot of that. So my dad has always been like that.
Okay.
But I think it's just impressive, watching people change.
And so your mother, you've seen, at least from your perspective, you see change, but maybe she was always like that.
Yeah. I think it kind of reactivated some old part of her.
I see.
And I think the older you get, you become complacent about things. And yeah, I grew up knowing my mom when she was 30 and 40, not knowing my mom when she was
right.
15, 20, 25,
That's such a sign of maturity from my viewpoint, because I've seen a lot of children that are in their 40s, and I don't think they've reflected and thought back upon what were my parents like at 20.
I think about that all the time.
Do you?
Because I'm 25, and I think societal pressures are get married, have kids right now, to a certain extent. And when I think about what my parents were doing, it's they were so intentional.
Yeah.
They met each other. It took them 2 years to realize we can do this for life. They're extremely loyal and loving, and again exercise the patience to wait 9 years to have my brother and I.
You're saying how maybe you observing your mother's grit at 25 years old, 24 years old, how has that affected your relationship with cycling?
Well, she chased a life of stability, and her grit was dedicated towards a safe retirement, 401k matches, the steady chipping away for COLA increases for teachers.
Yep.
And cycling's the exact opposite.
Yeah.
It's you take a bet on yourself.
That's right.
Performance driven. You can crash and your career's over overnight.
Yes.
There's so much risk associated with it. I think that what I've learned as far as grit in cycling has come from maybe just you have a job to get it done, no excuses.
Okay.
And also I've seen what she's done when in a tight spot. But cycling, I've only been backed into a corner in cycling once.
Okay.
And no, twice.
Yeah.
But when I think about my mom and the grit she shows, I think more about my other life outside of cycling.
Right.
And showing grit and making strategic moves there.
And so you recently took a promotion, correct?
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about the company you worked for, and about that, how it's been since the last month of promotion.
Yeah, so I'll give a debrief.
Please.
So I graduated university last year.
Right, and that was in Tennessee, correct?
Yeah.
Good climbing?
Yeah, very punchy climbing.
Yes.
So right at the base of the Appalachians.
Near Johnson City?
Yeah, so it was Johnson City, yeah.
Gotcha.
So I got my degree in accounting, finished up. First thing I did was move to Boulder.
Okay.
There's a lot of opportunity here, cycling-wise. I love it.
Right.
The summers are amazing.
Especially if you just camp out at Scratch Cafes all day, every day.
So those who don't know, I work remote Tuesdays, Fridays. I'm usually in Scratch from 8. It's probably noon, as long as I can. I stack all my customer-facing meetings until
love it.
the afternoons. So, but yeah, I graduated, moved out here, did a lot of job research.
Okay.
Knew I wanted to get into tech sales because I needed something that was performance driven.
Okay.
I have been so heavily driven towards metrics since a kid. You know, whether it's the 4.0 GPA.
Right.
I graduated high school at 16.
Okay.
You know,
Impressive.
like,
Yes.
yeah, like when it comes to cycling, like power numbers, results driven, like I used to chase those numbers for power, and then I was like, okay, well, how do I convert this over to results?
Right.
And just obsessed with strategy, tactics, like how to swing momentum and the nuances of like racing. So I knew that like I needed my day-to-day job to
not be accounting,
yeah,
but to be performance driven.
Yeah, but if the economy crashes, I can always go back to accounting.
There you go.
So yeah, you know, it was very stable. It was a stable degree.
Yeah.
But I knew that for the lifestyle that I wanted, as far as like retiring early,
yep,
and spending time with the potential family, sales is where it was at. Yeah, you know, like graduating college, that was super important to me to get a stable like career.
Yep.
Datadog's never had layoffs since their inception back in 2012.
Right.
So the sales training is amazing. The company culture is great.
So real quick, like that comment about layoffs says something about their values.
Yeah.
How do your values line up?
I think it's great, you know. I think that when you get to orgs that massive,
yeah,
Datadog's the #1 observability platform in the space.
Okay.
So there's just certain things and like bureaucracy you're not always gonna like, but I think they do a good job like taking care of their employees,
okay,
and making them feel cared for.
Yeah. It seems to me, so let's tell our listeners about your mission to be service driven.
So for those who are unfamiliar, I used to work with like 40 junior athletes,
okay,
like back in 2020, and they were all like high performance. So a lot of them had gone on to represent the national team, win national titles, race world championships, all while balancing school.
Okay.
And
so you can relate.
Yeah. You know, for me as a junior, I was on Team USA. I graduated high school early, and you know, I had the highest level of like goals when it comes to school, when it comes to, you know, cycling,
yeah,
and trying to find time for a social life. Yeah, you know, I think my philosophy and why I was like successful as a coach and was able to grow so fast was because I was like, hey, look, I know what I'm doing as far as being a coach. You know, as far as being able to put workouts together that can get you on the highest stage, but also just being well-rounded. So I was able to be a good match for the parents along with the kids.
Okay.
And long-term, you know, the kids are going to be better off, you know, being able to go to school and being able to have something to fall back on. Yeah. So that it's not all or nothing. And
so you had those explicit conversations with the kids and parents.
Yeah, you know,
that's so important. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I still work with the kids. Not as many though.
Okay.
So like I just had a conversation literally last Monday.
Okay.
Talking to them about like, hey, what are his goals? You know, on the bike. How is he doing on the bike? What's his GPA?
Yeah.
Where do you want it?
Right.
And like, how does he feel about that?
Yes.
What's your relationship with him and cycling? And like the biggest bottlenecks. So that way I can come in and just make things a little bit easier for both parties.
Yep.
But
that's important for the parents. You have these expectations, these goals for happiness for your kids.
Yeah.
And cycling makes you happy, but is it going to leave you happy at 45?
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, it's like long term. I've been coaching for 7 years now.
Okay.
Actually, yeah, 7. I've literally, like, when I went to Milligan, one of my athletes also graduated high school, and we were teammates at Milligan. Okay. And then he won nationals. And I was like, yes! I get so much happier when they win, like, right? It means so much more.
So, you know, jumping a little bit, first, I guess I will make the comment. You know, I had seen you at Scratch a number of times.
Yeah.
Approached you. I knew about your racing. But what stuck out to me in our first conversation, when you asked me the question, if you were to take juniors to Worlds, could Wove help fund it? That to me was the hook. I was like, yep. I was like, you can talk all day about your accomplishments as an athlete, but when I see someone that is personally performance driven and service oriented, pro-social in nature, it's like, okay, we share the same value systems.
Yeah.
And let's go and make this a partnership.
Yeah.
So, Lachlan definitely set the path for doing this non-traditional.
Yeah.
But remaining privateer and yourself doing privateer, tell us more about that.
Yeah. So, I came back to racing with Legion.
Okay.
That was like my introduction back into like the pro crit circuit, at least. I'd never done Tulsa or Salt Lake or any of like the big US races until I came back. For me and my schedule and my priorities, I think that it's very difficult to find a team that's supportive of me working a full-time high-performance job.
Yeah. Right.
And believing that I could still succeed in these endeavors.
That's right. So
I'm like, no, I know I can.
Yeah.
So, it's more, I was dealing with more politics and telling them I could, and that created a lot of stress, and I spent more time making sure that we're in good standing than focusing on my training.
Yeah.
And, life. So
people management's work.
Yeah. Like surprisingly, it was just, having to get sat out for races last minute when I was preparing for them. Being told I need to come to Boulder and train. Like being told I need to coach less athletes.
Okay.
Like getting yelled at because I was going back to school. Like,
right.
It's crazy stuff. I should never be yelled at for choosing a career, like choosing education.
Yeah.
But I was. So, private, I also enjoy working with sponsors one-on-one.
Yeah.
And understanding what their brand means to them and seeing like how we can work together to make that goal work along with like what I want to do.
And so the privateer model allows you to do that.
Yeah. Like there's things that are important to me. I enjoy racing, but I really enjoy focusing on the next generation.
Yeah.
Personally, like, yeah.
So does that energize you?
A lot more. Like, it energizes me a lot more to see my athletes train and win than myself. And part of the reason I was so successful in 2021 is because I was working with so many kids.
Gotcha.
In 2020.
So this goes back to that conversation. We mentioned your CEO at Datadog, right?
Yeah.
We talked about how, at least through the Instagram lens of cycling can come across being a bit self-interested.
Yeah.
And what you're saying is that doesn't necessarily motivate you, but being service-oriented does.
Yeah. So, like my Instagram page, like I want it to be used as a source to help people like better their lives, whether it's like through work, whether it's through cycling, whether it's through like youth development, like supporting that, or like how I organize my day or how I'm able to balance everything.
Yeah.
I think that's helpful for people to see, and I want my platform to be based around that.
Yeah.
With like a little spice of like, yeah, I did really good this weekend.
Right.
Honestly, like if I win a race, it's because there's so many other things involved. Like, it wouldn't happen without the sponsors. Like it wouldn't happen without a race promoter,
right.
like making it work.
That's important. It's important to recognize that there's this balance between, self-interest isn't not an all bad thing.
Yeah.
But then also the moral sentiment of being pro-social and giving to others, like, is needed so you don't get burnt out.
Yeah. And I don't know, like I want my privateer program to be built around that. Yeah, there's three things that make like an athlete worth sponsoring.
Yeah.
You have the performance, can they succeed? And can they motivate others through like the second bucket, social media, as far as what's their presence, what's their brand recognition.
Yeah.
And the third is community engagement.
Okay.
So, you know, I think that for me, I'm focusing more on like how I can optimize all of those moving forward. Like it's little things like that. Like, okay, I have this privateer program. What can I actually do with it that can change and like make the world a better place?
Yeah.
And you know, seeing kids get GP 5000s, it was like, bro,
Right.
they were so excited. And like 1,000% glasses, they're like, dude, what preems are these?
Yeah.
And it's not like regular junior preems where it's like $20. It's like, no, $200 in tires and like,
That's right.
oh, you need more? Like you're racing mountain bikes? Yeah, let's get you a set. Like stuff like that that can actually help them on the performance end. I remember as a junior
It's
getting,
huge.
getting stuff like
It's the
that.
difference. When you're going up against a kid, let's say at a cyclocross race, who has 5 sets of wheels, different with tires on it.
Yeah.
And you have to compete against that kid.
Yeah,
And you have 1 set of wheels.
exactly.
That's not a fair playing field.
Yeah,
So you are making the playing field a little more fair.
yeah.
I love it.
So it's pretty sick. And ideally, like the program grows to where people follow me not for like what I've accomplished as far as results.
Right.
They'll follow because like they're curious as like what's next.
You know, I love that topic right there. So I have a little meetup group here in Boulder. We met last night. It's like retired professors and such.
Oh, sick.
We talk about psychology and philosophy. Last night's topic was, is status as important as belonging? Setting belonging aside, I'm curious because what you just said, you know, we want people to value us for who we are as people,
Yeah.
not who we are as the 1 or 2 dimensional objects we are online.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Nuts.
as you create your brand, which helps promote different people, how important that is it for you, for people to understand you belong beyond some sort of one-dimensional object online?
You know, like status versus belonging. Like here I have good status. Like it's an athlete hub and I fit in the category of like a strong influencer that's a multi-time national champion. Like I
Right.
fit in really well here. I have a very well-paying job. But what I miss most right now
Yeah.
is spending time with my brother on a daily basis and spending time with my friends, getting like absolutely like hole-in-the-wall tacos
Yeah.
and just laughing about the most menial shit in life.
Those activities have nothing to do with your accomplishments.
Yeah, like I could be making $1 million a year
Or,
and I would still miss that.
right.
I don't know, like I could win 10 more titles, but like I know it wouldn't mean as much
Yeah.
as, you know.
So, you know, I think about how, like, people use heuristics, these mental shortcuts to kind of categorize us. I meet you for the first time, I'm going, no matter how hard I try, just because of how our brains work, I'm going to say, I'm going to shove you into some boxes.
Yeah.
It's just going to happen.
Yeah.
And I have a desire personally to deny people that opportunity, but then you recognize the only way the person's going to be able to get to know us is if they have a chance to categorize us, to slot us into some sort of status.
Yeah.
And it's a real interesting thing. It's like, well, I want you to like the person, not the idealized object that you think is me.
Yeah.
And so I can just imagine being a pro athlete that's infinitely harder. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm 25, I date.
There you go.
I think something common that comes up is like, oddly enough, cycling's a pretty like tight-knit sport. It's pretty tiny.
It is.
In the US.
Yeah.
But I have people that are just like wanting to go out only because I'm a pro athlete.
Right.
I'm like, I am good, thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah.
And it's literally like, there's so much outside of that.
Yeah.
That means so much more to me.
But then I want to cut those people's sympathy, saying, well, how else are they supposed to categorize us?
So,
but you tell me your opinion.
You know, like, coincidentally, I had lunch with the VP of technology at Savage and Fenty.
Okay.
It's Rihanna's brand. It's her baby.
Yeah.
She saw Rihanna the week previous. I'm telling my coworkers about it, and they're like, "What would you say to Rihanna when you meet her? Like, if you met her, how are you? How was your week? Like, what did you do today?" Like, it doesn't. Right. Like, I'll give her a chance to tell her, like,
be human.
Tell me what's passionate to her.
There you go.
So that way, it's like, okay, well, these are the things that are actually important to you. You know, how's life on a scale of 1 to 10? Like, what's challenging you?
Yeah.
So that way I can understand the way that they think legitimately.
Yeah.
That's what matters. I definitely stutter though.
So what I like about this conversation, about the reason why I like the conversation about corporate, you know, and organizational settings, in addition to athletics, is because so much of us mere mortals, I think the reason why we find professional athletics important, not a nice to have, but a must have, is because it sets the benchmark in terms of what we can achieve, not just athletically, not just as a cyclist, for example, not just as a football or basketball player, but what a human can do. And we find all of these, you know, you have a lot of leaders that will use athletic rhetoric when they're motivating a team, right? Well, there's a reason for that. We relate to that. And so here you are bridging those two worlds in your own life. You're not just, this isn't just symbolism. This is reality. You are doing leadership in the corporate world. Yep. And you are like one of the highest level US road riders right now. So, and I think it's, so getting your perspective on both, because you're high performance in one, but we're talking about high performance in the other. And I find that, I find that super interesting.
Yeah, you know, at the end of the day, it's tough. I mean, like, damn, I got a lot of stuff I need to get done. I'm like, okay, well, I plan out. There's a book called 12-Week Year. I would highly recommend it. It's by Brian P. Morgan, but it essentially it's essentially like, how can we maybe get the most out of our year? And I separate my year based on like 12 weeks, like a quarter. So I'll go like, what do I want to get done in these 12 weeks? And I'll have like insane goals. And then, or like I'll have these goals that I want to do on like a yearly basis. And I'm like, okay, let's try to up this 20%. Like, how can I get like 120% of like a fourth done within this quarter? And then kind of chopping it down as far as like a week by week basis. So I plan on Sundays, like, what does this week look like? Okay, what does each day need to look like in order to get everything done? And there's like points where I'm like, I'm gonna have to wake up at like 4 a.m. in order to make sure that like I can get this training right in, I can show up to work, and I can be present, and I can get everything that I need to get done. And then, you know, in the evenings, like making time for friends. But at the end of the day, it's kind of like what you need to do in order to stay, or it's what I need to do in order to live like a fulfilled life, be happy. Yeah.
You know, what's interesting too, we talked a little bit about Legion before, and a part of Legion's mission was the diversity, equity, and inclusion part, right?
Yeah.
And then obviously that exists in the corporate world. You just brought that up with your current organization, right? You know, in Boston, I worked for a management consulting firm that only focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion. This is back in the 2010s. And then my academic work was also partly in this area. And actually, I currently do autism in the workplace work at Vanderbilt.
Oh,
so
awesome.
Still involved in that world. But what I would say, what's so fascinating to me is we can focus on, let's select people for representation. And that's important. Role models, same thing in cycling, right? Because if you see someone, let's say it's an autistic person, let's say it's a person of color that looks like yourself, you have beliefs about what we can potentially do, but talking about the day-to-day pragmatic DEI work, there's a lot of research in this area, and I'll just cut to the chase and say I think the most important stuff in the corporate world is the recognition that the more diversity of thought you have, the more diversity of value you have, the more conflict you're going to have. Simple as that. When you bring different others in the room, conflict will happen, and it's upon leadership to turn that conflict into innovative ideas, projects, versus letting it deteriorate the organization.
Yeah.
And I think like if you can bring in all the representation and people of different backgrounds and different value systems and ethnic backgrounds as you want, but if you're allowing conflict to tear apart that organization,
Yeah.
I don't know. I want to hear if you have any thoughts about that from a corporate lens, but also from a cycling lens.
I'll talk about it on a cycling lens. I think it's more applicable there. Like the tech space is actually doing really good.
Good.
Good work. I think the cycling space needs more work. So
yeah.
I'll talk about what that looks like on the cycling end. Cycling is a 99% white sport. It is only now that we're getting Beanie winning like a Tour de France stage, like the stage, not even like the whole, like,
yep.
When you think about how many hurdles you'd have to jump through in order to put someone of color on a stage like that to perform well, it's just like that alone should show like why we need more DEI, because it's not like we can't do it, obviously. Like when you look at other sports like track and field, like I don't know, we're obviously capable, but I think that the barriers to entry, the moment that it starts to get financial, that's where you'll start to get issues with diversity in the sport. And I think that people are upset that like people of color get an advantage, but really like what is happening is they're just literally leveling the playing field as far as like just giving them a chance, because they can't afford an S-Works. They can't afford to spend $20,000 to have them travel all over the US or all over Europe, or send someone from the heart of Nigeria to go race in Europe for an entire season. Like the amount of expenses on that end is just insane. So as far as like increasing diversity in the sport, I think it really just comes like one. I'm only capable of doing little things, which is this like the sad reality. In order to actually change things for the better, it really requires corporate buy-in.
Okay.
And the sad thing about corporate buy-in is corporations only buy in when they can make a profit from it, which ties directly into tokenization. So, you look at the issues that are present with today's society, and like people only support like diversity, whether it's Black, Japanese, Latinos in the sport, when they can use their image to sell more bikes. They will never actually like take a loss if it means for the betterment of like society. So, I don't know. It's a problem that we face every day in the cycling world, and at the end of the day, like it's made me feel a lot of friction in the sport, like when I was racing in Europe. And it's also a big reason why I don't want to go to Europe and go race bikes over there. It's so like I would rather stay here, where I feel at home to a certain extent. I don't know. It's I think often about what it'd take. I think often about what I can do. And I'm a 25-year-old kid.
Yeah.
I'm also like a 25-year-old first-generation kid trying to build a strong foundation for myself financially, so I can't spend all of my time in the sport. Legitimately, I'm maxed out.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just doing the best I can. If someone were to ask me, like, what can we do to increase diversity without having the corporate backing? Every diverse family, if they expect their kid to be a cyclist, which is such, like, you can't expect your kid to be anything. Like, they're their own person. But if you want to give them the option to go to these bikes, you better start saving now.
Yeah.
You better strategically make career moves so that you can be financially capable enough to give them that option.
Yeah.
So if corporations can't do it, like, we have to do it. And, you know, that's why I'm always just a big fan of, like, programs like Black in Tech or conferences like Afrotech, or, you know, like Women in Sales, being able to have programs like that give them an opportunity to, like, feel welcomed here will help long term to make them, you know, more capable financially. So when their kids, whether it's a woman or, you know, Afro-Latino,
That's right.
like myself, my parents were just financially stable enough to give my brother and I cycling.
Yep.
Like, barely.
Yeah.
We were not writing S-words, but just barely enough so that we can get onto teams that gave us those opportunities.
Yeah.
And even then, they still waited 9 years after getting married to have us.
Yeah.
And they both picked stable career paths. Like, that is the effort that's needed from most, like, the average ethnic family in order to give their kid the option to ride bikes.